morning, and I welcome you all to the first lecture demonstration of the 99th Annual Conference. Our first presenter this morning is Dr. Arathi Rao, a member of the Experts Committee of the Music Academy, recipient of the Musicologist Award for the year 2019. Dr. Rao has an Honours Diploma in Systems Management and MSc in Mathematics, a Vidvat degree in Carnatic Music on the Veena, and an MA in Music from the University of Madras. Her dissertation titled Vijayanagara as a Seat of Music obtained a PhD for her from the University of Mysore. Dr. Rao is at present a faculty member and research guide at the Jain University, Bengaluru, and today she will be presenting the Raganga Raga scheme followed by Muthuswami Diksitar with special focus on Malavagaula. Over to you, Dr. Arathi Rao. 45 minutes followed by interactions. You are, of course, very familiar with the routine here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sriram. My namaskarams to all the distinguished scholars, musicians, artists, music lovers who are present here. I must first thank Madras Music Academy for giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts today. It is an honor for me to be here to present my thoughts on the Raganga system of Muthuswami Diksitar in the presence of Diksitar experts who are on stage and in the audience, and I hope that I will be able to say something which is interesting. A lot has been said and discussed and thought about and written about the Raganga system of Muthuswami Diksitar by very distinguished scholars and musicians. Especially the various nuances that are there in the ragas, how this system is different from the other system that is prevalent in Carnatic music and so on. Today I'm going to take a slightly different approach. When we look at the Raganga system of Diksitar, for many years I have wondered, where did this come from? What was there before that? What did Diksitar and his family inherit? And how did this system evolve? So that is what I'm going to look at today, especially with respect to the 15th Mela Malavagaula. So I have been doing some work on the Gita, Prabandha, Suladi, Alapathaya songs that belong to the medieval and early modern period. And I'm trying to link the raga system of these songs with the raga system of Dikshitar. So that is what I hope to present today. So first of all, I'm going to talk about some prior research that is very important for us to understand the Raganga system. And we always talk about Dikshitar and his family inheriting the Venkatamaki system. So I'm going to start with Venkatamaki's Mela system and how it morphed into the Mela system of Mudhu Venkatamaki and what happened in between. And then the 15th Mela, we are going to focus more on the 15th Mela and the ragas that come under it, the janya-ragas. And then I'm going to try and find some linkages with the past for these ragas, and then we will try to summarize the findings that I have. So that is how I'm going to go about it. And first of all, as we all know, the Raganga system described by Mudhu Venkatamaki is the raga framework that is the raga system for most of Dikshitar's, all of Dikshitar's compositions, and it has been well documented in the Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini. So when we talk about Mudhu Venkatamaki's system, it is the same system that is there in the SSP, as we call it. And this appeared as an Anubandham to the Chaturthandi Prakashika. These are some facts that are well known. I'm just going to talk about them quickly so that we have a background of what we are going to look at next. And then it is well known that Mudhu Venkatamaki was a different person and as compared to Venkatamaki, and he was a descendant. And then the raga system in the Raga Lakshanam of Mudhu Venkatamaki shows an evolution from Venkatamaki's Mela system. We are going to look at that shortly. And there are many new Janya ragas, and some ragas have changed and so on. So I'm going to restrict myself to only Dikshitar compositions in the SSP. There are many compositions of Dikshitar which are not in SSP. This is not to say that they are not authentic. I don't want to get into that debate, but I'm just trying to restrict myself due to want of time. And I'm going to try to look at the evolution of the Raganga system within these compositions. Then two very important dissertations that give us a lot of information about the Raganga system of Dikshitar are there. One is by Dr. R. Hemalata. She has done a study of the Raganga Ragas in the Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini of Subramanya Dikshitar. This was a PhD thesis of hers, and it was submitted to the University of Madras in 2001. The other dissertation which I would like to talk about is by Dr. R. Abhirama Sundari, where she talks about the ragas of this 15th Mela specifically. She has done an intensive study trying to examine what is the swarupa of these ragas and whether there are any similarities and any linkages. Dr. Hemalata is also looking at the Arohana Avarohana of the ragas and whether the Arohana Avarohanas appeared before the swarupa of the raga was crystallized, or whether the swarupa of the raga was fully formulated and then the Arohana Avarohana came about. So I'm not going to get into that because that has already been examined in great depth, and many conclusions of Dr. Hemalata have been formulated at the end. So as I just said, I'm going to look at it from a more historical perspective. Then a quick look at the development of the Mela system. These are all well-known facts, but I just want to reiterate them. The Mela system evolved in around the earliest evidence of the Mela system in a written treatise is in the 16th century in Swaramela Kalanidhi. Of course, it is said that Sri Vidyaranya composed Sangeeta Sara before that, but we do not have that available to us. So basically a Mela was just a grouping of ragas, and then we get into the next stage where the scales were artificially computed, and this formula was given by Venkatamaki. But Venkatamaki was wise enough to say that he was happy with 19 Melas which were there in his time, and they were sufficient for the raga system of his time. Then comes Shahaji, and who has written his Raga Lakshanamu in the 17th he was there between the 17th and 18th century. So he talks about the Mela Karta concept. That is, a raga which is giving its name to the Mela is a Mela Karta. Then we have Raga Lakshanam of Muddu Venkatamaki, which is around the same time as Tulaja, who is Shahaji's brother and who follows Shahaji. Just after him he is there. And Muddu Venkatamaki has listed, in his system you find names for all the 72. At the same time, ragas were artificially created wherever the ragas were not there. They were artificially created, and simultaneously we see that compositions were coming about in those ragas. So all this happened, and then finally in the last stage, that is the modern period, we find we call Janaka, Melakarta, Raganga, all we say that they are all synonymous. So that has happened in the final stage. So this is how the Mela system has evolved. Let us try to look at Venkatamaki's 19 Melas and see how these have equivalents in the later systems. Now, I have mentioned here Tulaja, but whatever Tulaja is saying, Shahaji is more or less saying the same thing. So the names of the Melas that Venkatamaki gives, many of the names carry through to Tulaja and Shahaji, and after that to Muddu Venkatamaki. So we see that all the 19 Melas have corresponding Melas in the later systems. Of course, some of the names have changed, and now we have the prefix of Dhira Shankara Bharana, Hari Kedara Gaula, and so on. Shanta Kalyani. So all of these prefixes are there, and we know why we need the prefixes. I don't need to go into that. The Katapayadi Sutra, etc., we know all about that. So these are the equivalent Melas. Now, I just wanted to look at some Melas which are kind of important in the sense that they have many Janya Ragas. And we see that from Venkatamaki to Muddu Venkatamaki, many Janya Ragas have got added. So in Muddu Venkatamaki's time, we have ragas like Marga Hindola and Navaratna Vilasam, etc., which were not there in the earlier systems. This is just to see that, some of these ragas which are very rich and which we feel that they have a lot of potential. These have come about in the later period also. But it's not to say that the traditional ragas are also not equally potent, but some of the traditional ragas have also disappeared. They are not as much seen in the modern period as they ought to be. So we look at Sri Raga, we see that again there are many janya ragas that have got added. And I'll be talking about this even with respect to Malavagaula. Many of the times we see that some of the new ragas that have crept in, there seems to be some influence from the north. So we have to be very broad-minded when we say traditional raga and non-traditional raga, because some of the very traditional ragas like Todi and Kalyani, they have come from the north. So then Kamboji Mela, of course, that's now called Raganga Raga in the Muddu Venkatamaki system. So many new ragas, again, if we look at Jujavanti and all that, we see that the northern influence coming in. Then Shankara Bharana, of course, is again a big mela with many janyas. And then we have Kalyani. The Tulaja's description of the Janya Ragas is missing. That is the reason that there are very few ragas here. Probably there would have been more. We see Saranga, Yamuna Kalyani, Mohanam. Now Mohanam has moved from Kamboji to Kalyani. So that's an interesting thing that we see. So if we look at the transitions of how the ragas have moved from one mela to the other, Bhupala was a mela earlier, but that was the 8th mela corresponding to the Todi mela of today. But now, in the later system, there is a new mela called Bhinna Shajja, which becomes Dhuni Bhinna Shajjam in Muddu Venkatamaki system. So the realignment happens there. And Uday Ravi Chandrika, as we know, in the Dikshitar system has the higher Nishada. So it aligns to Dhuni Bhinna Shajja and so on. So we see quite a few movements of the ragas across the melas, which shows how the swaras are going a little higher up or a little lower. Of course, I'm only stopping at Muddu Venkatamaki system. We know for a fact that beyond that, today we are singing some of the ragas differently. Post Dikshitar, so I'm not getting into that. So, one interesting raga that I want to talk about is Saranga. So if we look at Saranga, it had something called the Urdhva Gandhara. Now this Urdhva Gandhara was nothing but our Shuddha Madhyama. And in the earlier systems, in the northern texts, we find like Sadraga Chandrodaya or even Ragamala and all that, we find this mention of the Urdhva Gandhara, which is synonymous with the Shuddha Madhyama. So we could have the Urdhva Gandhara and the what we call the Pratimadhyama along with it. So in Saranga, we had the Urdhva Gandhara and the Pratimadhyama. But later on, when we come to the Tulaja period, we know that there is nothing like an Urdhva Gandhara. But Tulaja still talks about Saranga as a separate mela having the higher Gandhara equivalent to the Shuddha Madhyama. And then he also says that it's a separate mela by itself, it's a raga by itself. And later in Muddu Venkatamaki system, that is integrated into the 72 Mela Karta system, because till then it could not be a part of 72. So what Muddu Venkatamaki has done is he has put it into the Kalyani Mela, and he has made the Urdhva Gandhara as a Shuddha Madhyama and added one Antara Gandhara. So now you have two Madhyamas and one Gandhara instead of just one Urdhva Gandhara and one Madhyama. So that is the present Swarupa of Saranga. Of course, Saranga also exists in Hindustani. Sarang Prakars are there, and there are many Saranga family ragas. So that is one interesting thing that we see. And then we also see that newer melas have come in. 19 has become 72. And the Arohana Avarohana, Dr. Hemlata has done intensive study on that, as I mentioned. That seems to encapsulate some of the Vakra formations and so on. But I feel that it is not enough to capture the essence of the raga. Because if we look at all of us who have studied SSP know that Subbarama Dikshitar gives many phrases and a lot of additional notes to tell us what the raga is like. So Arohana Avarohana is not enough to capture the essence of the raga. Of course, in Muddu Venkatamaki system, it is very, the Arohana Avarohanas are Vakra, and there are a lot of Dirgha Swaras and so on. So they are very well thought out. But still, and many times we see that the Anya Swara does not come in the Arohana Avarohana. It is not part of the Murchana. So it is mentioned separately. So these are some of the observations that I have. Now, I'd like to give a quick introduction to the manuscripts which are there in Tanjore Saraswati Mahal Library, particularly the collection entitled Geetadi, which I call Geetadi because they have the word Geeta in the title, Nana Vidha Geetamulu, etc. So these manuscripts have many notations of Alapa, Thaya, Suladi, Gita, Prabandha, etc. And we are going to try and look at some of these examples and try to link them with the Dikshitar Kritis that we know. And as I always say that it's very difficult to read these manuscripts because we don't know whether it is Madhyasthayi or Tarasthayi or Mandrasthayi. We don't have those markers. Some of the manuscripts could be damaged. There could be missing folio. If you miss one folio, then the charana is completely lost or whatever. I mean, part of the song is lost. So those kind of challenges we have, but with that, we still try to reconstruct what we can from the music of those songs. So coming to, this is an example of a TMSSML manuscript. Now this is transcribed to Devanagari. The original manuscripts were palm leaf manuscripts which were written in Telugu script, but many of them have been copied by the library itself into Devanagari. So this is an example of Velavali Raga. Now this Velavali is an interesting raga because between Shahaji and Tulaja there is a difference of opinion. Shahaji is putting it under the Sri Raga Mela, and Tulaja is raising the Nishada and making a separate mela for it. So that is I think one difference between the two brothers. So and that becomes our Gauri Velavali that we know today. Then just a quick overview of the Malavagaula Mela. It's a very old Mela. It has existed from the time, or at least from the 16th century. And there could be this name repeated across different texts in different ways. Other names that have been given for this Mela are Gaula, Gauri, Gaudi, Gurjari, etc. But they are all referring to the same Mela. And it's always had the maximum number of Janya Ragas. That is the reason why I found it very interesting. Across all the texts, in all the time periods, it has the maximum number of Janya Ragas. In fact, Ramamatya himself in the 16th century, he says that Ragana Muttamottamaha and all that. So he has high praise for this raga also, Malavagaula. And in Mudduvenkatamakhi's Raga Lakshanam and in Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini, there are 30 Janya Ragas, not including Malavagaula, that are described. So we are going to look at some of these. We don't have time to look at all of them. But, the list is Salanganata, Chaya Gaula, Mangala Kaishiki, Megharanjini, Mechaboli, Takka, Nadanama Padi, Revagupti, Kannada Bangala, Gaula, Lalita, Gujjari, Gundakriya, Malahari, Bauli, etc. So we are going to look at some of these. I think these are all well known to all the people here. Oh, sorry. Then now the Janyas of Malavagaula I divide into 3 groups. There are very old ragas which we see from the time of Chaturdandi Prakashika. Some of them are even older than Chaturdandi Prakashika. So there's a huge list of those ragas. Then there are ragas which we see in Raga Lakshanamu of Shahaji and of course Tulaja Sangeeta Saramrita. Around the same time we see these ragas entering the South Indian system. Not to say that they are there for the first time. Some of these ragas were there even prior to Raga Lakshanamu of Shahaji, but they probably were there in the North Indian system. So they have entered the South Indian system at that time. And some of the ragas are not there even then, and they appear only in Mudduvenkatamakhi's time. So I have divided them into these 3 groups, and we're going to try and look at how these figure in the Gita, Prabandha, Alapa songs, if at all. So the first raga that I'm going to take is Chaya Gaula. Now, Chaya Gaula, there are some Alapa, Suladi notations. I'm going to take an example of an Aitam. An Aitam is the first section or Akshiptika of an Alapa. So before that, let's look at a small section of Saraswatya Bhagvatya.
Ratira Girija Ratnabharana Alankritaya Mati Majihvagrasthitaya Mangala Pradaya Sadayaya Saraswatya Bhagavatya Samrakshitoham Chaya Gaurataraya Varaya Shri Saraswatya Bhagavatya Samrakshitoham
Okay, so that was a small section from the Charana of Saraswatya Bhagavatya. So we see the Sanchara of Saraswatya Bhagavatya giving the essence of Chaya Gaula. Let us listen to the item and see if we can hear anything that resembles this.
Sa da sa sa ri sa ni sa da da pa pa ma ga ma ga pa ri ma pa da da pa pa ma ga ma ga sa ri ma ga sa ri sa ni sa da sa ri sa ni da sa ri ma ga sa da da pa ma ga ga sa ri ma ga sa ri sa.
That ga sa ri sa we see there also. I'm not saying that this means that all the songs were in the composed in the same way and the raga was exactly the same, but we do find some resemblance. So there is some continuity in the tradition of the raga. Then coming to Salanganata, I found Prabandha, Alapa, Suladi in this raga in the Gita Prabandha manuscripts. And we have Avyaja Karuna Katakshi in SSP. This is an attempt to reproduce what SSP is doing. No, it's not perfect, but it's just an indicative effort, I feel, just to show how the raga might have sounded. So let's listen to Avyaja Karuna Katakshi.
Pa ma pa da da pa ma pa da pa ma ga ri ri sa ni sa da da pa ma pa da sa ri sa ri ma ga ri ma pa ma ga ri sa ni sa da da pa ma ga ri ma pa ma pa da da ri sa ma ga ri sa ni sa da da pa ma ga ri sa da pa ma ga ri sa Vyaja Karuna Katakshi Nisham Mamava Kamakshi.
This is the Gita. I have not sung the lyrics because I want to focus on the raga.
Ri pa pa ma ri sa ri ma pa ma ri sa ni sa ri ma ri sa da pa ga ma pa ma ga ri sa da da pa pa ni sa ri ga ma da pa ma ga ri sa.
See, we see that in SSP they say we should not sing ni in the accent. There is no da ni sa or pa ni sa or anything. But in these older songs, sometimes ni is also present in accent. So the raga evolution we can see that some of the phrases are different because we always have sa da pa and the sa always we have sa ni sa, we don't have the pa da ni sa, right? So that small change we see in the Salanganata of the earlier period and the later period. Then coming to Ardhra Deshi, now Ardhra Deshi has many repeating swaras. Ga 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 re sa and da ni sa. Do we see that in the older songs is an interesting question. First let us listen to Sri Ganeshatparam. Okay, this is the Suladi. This is a Suladi by Sri Vyasaraja, Deha Jiranamaitu. So this we see re that repeating Deha ji, that the is seen there. But it's not exactly like the Ardhadeshi of the later period, but you do see some resemblance.
Vagadi panchakadvyapararahita hridayagara samsita dyogirajachita Shri Ganeshataram Chitana Hire Shivadishaktim Shattattva Swarupina Shri Ganeshataram Chitana Hire.
So a little bit of resemblance we do see. Then coming to the later period, we have Mangala Kaishiki. So let us listen to Sri Bhargavi, a little bit of that, and then move on to the corresponding Alapa song in the same raga.
Madana Guru Manine Mama Manasiti Shatu Madhukara Vijaya Mangala Kaishika Nivasatu Sadana Madhye Mahalakshmi Sada Viharatu Samarahe Makumbha Snapita Vijayatu Paranayana Nanakaranalini Parama Purusha Hari Pranayini Padana Kamala Guru Guhadarani Paranutaranganatharamanī Shri Bhargavi Bhadram Me Dishatu Shri Ranga
So now let's listen to the Aitam.
Sari ri sani da sari ri ri ga ga ri ga ma ma ga 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 ri ni da da ri ri ga ga ri ga pa ma ga ri ri sani sa sa sari sari ma ga ri da pa ma ni da pa da da pa ma pa pa ma ga ri re ne da ri re ga ma pa ma ga ri re ne da ni re sa ni da ni da pa ma pa ma pa ma ga ri re sa ni sa sa.
This the registers are not indicated, so we don't know whether it's going to Madras Sthai or Madhya Sthai. So it's just a conjecture of mine that I've used to reconstruct this. Then coming to Takka, this Takka Raga we find again it is there in SSP described. The Lakshanas have been described, and there is an Alpa Panchama in this Raga which I'm going to talk about. We also have correspondingly some notations of Alapa and Thaya and all in Tanjavur manuscript. So I'm going to play a small bit of Sundara Murtim, and then we'll move on to the other song.
Mandasmita mrudu gadanam manikya ruchira sadanam kundamukula nibharadanam uruguha modita gadanam sa tadari dara sari matani sadasa sari darisa sagaga madada magama pamariga sari sadamariga sasa tadari rigasa magapa magasa tamadadani dasa Gagamadari Sagamariga Tamadamagariga Sundara Murti Mashayami Shiva Bhusura Kulabdhi Chandam Karuna Sandram Sundara Murti Mashayami Sada mari magaga sa sa da ni sa re ga ma ma sa ni da ma ri 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 ma ma ga sa sa ma ma da ni da sa da ma ri ga sa ga da ni sa 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 ga ma sa ma pa ni ma ga sa 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 ma ri ga sa sa ga da 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 ga sa ga sa da da ni da da ma ma ri 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 ni ni da ni da ma ri ga sa sa.
This Samapani that is mentioned by Shahji, saying this is one exception where you have Panchama in this raga. So we don't find Samapani in the Dikshitar song, but this is mentioned as a place where the pa occurs. So, but Alpa Panchama, as it is handled in Takka, is where we are gliding from in SSP, and also the occurrence of Panchama is very very less. In the whole song, you won't find many occurrences of Panchama. So that is one of the things about Takka. Then coming to the next raga, that is Gauli Pantu. Now these are the ragas that have emerged in the time of the Raga Lakshanamu of Shahji and Tulaja. So some of these ragas were there earlier in other systems, but not in the southern system. So we are going to talk about Gauli Pantu. Now, as we all know, in the Dikshitar tradition, we don't have Pratimadhyama, at least not in SSP. So we can look at Krishnananda Mukunda, how it is sung.
Krishna Rahita Gopi Jana Vallabha Trivikrama Narayana Vasudeva Govinda Padmanabha Krishna Nanda Mukunda Murare Kripam Kuru Keshava Shaure Hare Krishna.
Now let us look at a Gita in this raga.
Sari ma pada pa ma ga re sa ni sa re ni re sa ni sa re pa ma ga ga re re sa ni da pa ma pa ni sa sa re ga re sa ni re sa ni da pa ma ga re sa da ni da pa ma da pa ma ga re pa ma ga re sa.
As we can see, the tala markings are not clear. It will take some effort to reconstruct this song. So I've just sung the swaras without the lyrics and without talas, because it's not clear how sometimes the aksharas don't fit into one avarta, so we have to sit and figure all that out. Then coming to the later period, that is, these are the ragas which emerged in the time of Muddu Venkatamaki's Raga Lakshanam. So some of these ragas are they have the prescription of Pratimadhyama. So these two ragas have the prescription of Pratimadhyama. In Malava Panchama, we see a clear Pratimadhyama occurring in Vasudevam Upasmahe, and that is clearly indicated in the SSP.
Vasavadi Devajala Vandita Vaikuntha Padam Dasa Jana Namabhita Dayakam Bhoja Padam Vasudevam Upasmahe Vasudevatmajam Harim.
Now, when we take Margadeshi is a raga where there is a prescription of Pratimadhyama in SSP, but it is not there in the notation. So what do? Do we sing it with it or not? So I referred to a recording of Professor S.R.J. Sir of this Mangala Devate Kriti, and he has sung the Pratimadhyama. Now we don't know whether it was part of the oral tradition that he has got it from, or it was a creative interpretation of SSP. So let us listen to him singing this.
Mangala Devate Padadevate.
That's very much there.
Mangaladevate Paradevate Mangaladevate Paradevate Mangalam Bhavatu Natadevate Mangaladevate Paradevate Mangalam Bhavatu Natadevate.
So this is, he has sung it in other places also. I have just given the bit of the Pallavi because of shortage of time. So even in the Chitteswara it comes. So now let's move on to one slightly difficult concept that we see in Dikshitar's compositions, particularly in some of the 15th Mela compositions we see this, that is the Grahaswara passages. Now, we have a wonderful article by Professor N. Ramanathan sir, where he has discussed this issue of Grahaswara passages. So, I'm just trying to summarize in brief what I have understood about this aspect. Now, this Grahaswara passages occurring in some of these compositions is an indication of a tradition which existed many centuries before. So let us look at an illustration of Sada Vinata Sadare in Revagupti, where I have attempted to sing the Grahaswara as it is given in the notation. And then let's try to understand what this represents. Sorry.
Rega pada sa ri ga ri sa da pada 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 sa da pada 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 sa ri ga ri sa da pa ga ri ga ma da ni ri ga ma ga ri ni da ma da ni ri ri ni da ma da ni ri ga ma ga ri ni da ma ga sa da.
We find that
sa da ri Sarasi Janayana Sodare.
So we find that there is no change in the melody. If we were to play it in an instrument, we could not make out any difference. So what is the fun in having lyrics that are indicating other swaras? So what are we trying to accomplish here? That is the question. So when I was trying to study this, I was told about another prabandha which has this feature in one of the Tanjore manuscripts. I'm grateful to Dr. Srilata for showing me this prabandha. And this has this Grahaswaram. This prabandha is in the Raga Mohana. Now Mohana is a relatively more recent raga which appears in the Shahaji Tulaja time period. So this has a Grahaswaram. I have tried to reproduce the manuscript as it is here. And I've also tried to sing it the way it is.
Sa sa ri ri ga ga pa ga ri ga pa ga ga ri ga sa ri ga ga pa pa sa ri ga pa ma ma pa pa da sa da pa da sa da pa da ma pa pa da sa ma pa da sa.
Now this is very clear because this is a normal Graha Bheda that we do, right? We have Shuddha, Saveri and Mohana. So it's very easy for us to understand that this is a regular Graha Bheda that is being done. But when we talk about ragas like Revagupti and Kannada Bangala, it's not the usual Graha Bheda, because if we try to place the swaras on those positions, we end up with an invalid scale with two Pratimadhyamas and so on. That is the reason we find it difficult to understand that Grahaswara. So to understand this, if we go back a little, there is an article by Professor R. Satyanarayana where he has discussed the origins of Revagupti from the Grama Raga period. It was in the Sangeeta Ratnakara, it was described as being derived from the Madhyama and Arshabhi, this is actually Arshabhi Jati and the Abhirudgata Murchana that I have not mentioned in the slide. So there are a lot of details about the Murchanas and the Jatis from which it is derived. So it is difficult to go into all that now, but in brief, the point that he has made is that it is a derivative of the old grama system. And then in those days, the tonic note was Rishabha. It was not Shadja. There were many ragas. In fact, we see many ragas even in SSP where the Grahaswara is not Shadja, it is something else. So, this is a representative of the older system. So, if we look at Rishabha as the Grahaswara, and it says that in the older texts we find that Shadja and Panchama were the Varjyaswaras. So, that leaves us with Rigamadani, right? But if we transpose that to the newer system where we have Shadja as the Grahaswara, then we get our Sarigapada Sa. So, this is the representative of the older system. If we understand what the older system was like, it makes more sense to us. But to get a musical understanding of this, I just attempted to sing this, the same Grahaswara passage in a more familiar raga, which will give us some inkling of a Grahapeda. At least it will give us valid swaras. Of course, that is not a really valid scale or a valid raga as such, but it will at least give us swaras which sound reasonable to us. So here is my attempt at singing this in Shivaranjani.
Riga pada sa ri ga ri sa da pa ga pada pada sa da pada 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 sa ri ga ri sa da pa ga ri ga ma da ni ri ga ma ga ri ni da ma da ni ri ni da ma da ni ri ga ma ga ri ni da ma ga.
It sounds like, of course, it's all very plain with no gamakas. It sounds like the swaras of Shankarabharana. So, at least musical intervals seem to be valid for us. But of course, this is only an illustration to show that the musical intervals that we are familiar with are not the same as what they were probably several centuries ago. So, when we talk about Revagupti in the Revagupta or Revagupti in the Grama period, how they sounded, how Shadjagrama sounded, there are opinions of scholars which say that it sounded like Kharahara Priya. The Shuddha Swaras were like Kharahara Priya. That means that they did not sound anything like what it sounds today. So probably that was the reason why we are unable to understand how this Grahabheda shift could have happened, and it was still musically a valid interval. So this was just a small attempt to illustrate that. So then we move on to the other issue of Pratimadhyama, Chuta Panchama and Alpa Panchama. Now Alpa Panchama, as we saw in Takka, it is sung with a connection to Madhyama, and it also represents a Panchama occurring very less. So Alpa is used for swaras which occur very less, and Pratimadhyama, of course, is a higher variety of Panchama. And where do we have Chuta Panchama? Chuta Panchama is where the Panchama is sung a little lower. Now, we have this understanding that Chuta Panchama has morphed into Pratimadhyama. So, where is the difference? Pratimadhyama is a higher variety of Madhyama, and Chuta Panchama is a lower variety of Panchama, where you don't quite touch the Panchama, you sing it slightly lower. So, that is the difference between them. So, we see Chuta Panchama occurring in Mangala Kaishiki, Gauri, Vasanta, etc. And Pratimadhyama has been prescribed in ragas like Malava Panchama, Margadeshi, Ramakali, and so on. And today we are singing Gauli Pantu with Pratimadhyama, Marua with Pratimadhyama, Purvi with Pratimadhyama. In fact, Purvi not the Dikshitar Kriti, but there is a Purvi Tillana which everyone sings. Now that Purvi is very different from the Purvi of the Dikshitar tradition. So where did this come from? That Purvi, I came to know from Professor Ramanathan sir that the Tillana that we all sung was actually a Trivat. And that has come into now our system, and we call it a Tillana, and we are singing it. So there is probably the influence of even in Paraj, in the Dhanamal school, we see the occurrence of Pratimadhyama in one or two places. So I'm grateful to Sri Ravi Rajgopalan for sharing that recording with me. I hope to play it in the next slide. So I think there is a slight influence of North Indian music for some of these ragas. So this is North Indian Purvi. Okay. So we have I'll just play this recording of Vrindama. that's where the Pratimadhyama is coming. So we can see that there is a classification of Ghana, Naya, Deshya given by Shahaji, and the Deshya ragas are those which seem to have the North Indian influence. Naya or Rakti ragas, of course, have a lot of potential in terms of flexibility and so on. And Ghana ragas are those which are suitable for Tanam. That is the, so we can see how that classification is coming about if we look at the Swarupas of the ragas. So one special mention that I would like to mention is make is of Saveri, Saurashtra and Vasanta. Now Dr. Abhirama Sundari has written about this in her thesis. I'm just trying to summarize this. That Saveri, we sense a kind of discomfort that Subbarama Dikshitar has in classifying it in the 15th Mela, because there is a usage of Sadharana Gandharam and Kaishiki Nishada, which we see in the Dhanamal school. And Saurashtra, of course, as we know, now it has become a janya of the 17th Mela because of all the non-Malavagaula swaras there. And in fact, Subbarama Dikshitar tries to compare Saurashtra with Purna Panchamam. And Dr. Abhirama Sundari has written, it's not clear why he is doing that, because we don't see anything in common. And Vasanta, of course, the Panchashruti Daivata has become more prominent, and we hardly sing the Shuddha Daivata anymore. So these are some of the features, special features of the ragas. And the other thing is about Saveri, which was pentatonic earlier. If we look at Swaramela Kalanidhi, Saveri was a janya of the 29th Mela. I mean the equivalent of the 29th Mela. And in Chahaji and Tulja's period, we find that the swaras have reduced, and it has become, the Arohana has become, the Avarohana has got all the swaras. So now it's become Sampurna. So Srimati Hema Ramanathan has written that it is probable that Asaveri has entered the southern system and become Saveri and got crystallized as Saveri, and the old Saveri is called Shuddha Saveri. So that Shuddha prefix is added for Dhanyasi also. The old Dhanyasi has become Shuddha Dhanyasi, and the new Dhanyasi is what we know today. So some of these transformations have taken place. Then these are the 4 sets of ragas that are compared by Subbarama Dikshitar, Nadarama Kriya and Malavagaula, Takka and Lalita. Like we saw, Takka is very much like Lalita, except that it has that Alpa Panchama. And the other thing which Professor Ramanathan sir mentioned to me, we see in SSP that in the description of Lalita, Subbarama Dikshitar says that in the old tradition, Lalita was confined to the Madhyasthai Madhyama. But we don't have Sancharas in the Tarasthai, but Dikshitar has composed in the Tarasthai. So in Sri Vishwanatham, we see that lower range, and in Hiranmayi, we see the higher range. So that is another thing that we can say is different. And Kannada Bangala and Saveri, see, he's not comparing Kannada Bangala with Malahari. They have the same scale, but he's comparing with Saveri because of the way the phrases are. And if we look at Renuka Devi, we see that the way he starts itself, Renuka, that Damapa, that itself is different from Malahari. So he's comparing it with Saveri rather than Malahari. And of course, we saw historically Kannada Bangala is older, and the new version of Saveri is more recent than the older Kannada Bangala. So this is just a quick look at the comparisons being done by Subbarama Dikshitar. So now we did not talk about Malavagaula at all. Malavagaula is a raga that seems to be, this is again Dr. Abhirama Sundari has discussed this in detail, which I am trying to sum up here. It seems to be a synthetic or artificial raga, and initially in the Swaramela Kalanidhi it was supposed to be an Audava raga, and later it changes to Sampurna. And the one thing that is not quite nice about this is there are not so many Varja, Vakra phrases. We have Janti, Dhatu phrases and all that. So, Dr. Abhirama Sundari has also mentioned that it doesn't seem to be such a raga with so much potential as some of its Jana ragas. So, it is not such a very rich raga as some of the Janya ragas are. So, of course, Subbarama Dikshitar notes that for the Abhyasa Gana, the initial exercises, this raga is very suitable. So, to sum up, some of these findings of mine are that the Raganga system, as we saw, there are some ragas which are very old from CDP, that is Chaturdandi Prakashika, or even older. Some ragas have entered from the north, either at the time of Raga Lakshanam of Shahaji or later, or even before CDP. So we have ragas entering from the north at different periods of time. And the Arohana, Avarohana are quite interesting, but they do not fully capture all the features of the ragas. Then the Janya ragas do have distinct melodic identities, and there are some ragas which show affinity to other melas also, like Saurashtra and Vasanta. Now we have moved them to other melas because they seem to not fit in there. And then some of the examples that we saw of the Gita, Prabandha, Alapa, Suladi notations, they do seem to have some features which are common to the features of the raga that we know as of today, and also what was described by Shahaji and Tulaja. In fact, some of the examples like Deha Jirnavaitu Suladi, they're actually mentioned in Raga Lakshanam of Shahaji. And those have been given as illustrations for the Raga Swarupa. So we see some resemblance, but at this point we cannot say that the features are in exactly this, because we need to study many more compositions of that period in order to be able to talk about the raga with certainty. And it's only a prima facie comparison that tells us that the features of the raga, some of them at least, were there in the older period also. So more work needs to be done in that area. So I would like to acknowledge the help and the inputs given by Professor Dr. N. Ramanathan sir, without which I would not have been able to make this presentation. And I'm very grateful to Dr. R.S. Jayalakshmi madam for giving me many ideas, and over the years, helping me with many things. And I would like to acknowledge Srimati Revati Sadashivam, who has taught me some of these compositions, Dr. K. Srilata, who helped me to source some of the songs, and also I have discussed many ideas with her, Sri Sugnandani, who helped me with my presentation, Srimati Chaitra Sontake, who helped me to understand some of the Hindustani ragas, and Sri Ravi Raj Gopalan, who also shared the recordings of Dhanamal Bani, that is the Srimati Brindama, with me. So with that I come to the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Arathi Rao. We'll now have interaction with members of the experts committee. Mike, please. Sangeeta Kala Acharya, Dr. Rita Rajan.
Namaskaram. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Informative.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
You said 30 Janya ragas, no?
Yeah.
Can we have the cell phones on silent, please?
Yeah.
Abraham Sundari has given 31.
31 including Malavagaula.
No, she doesn't say like that. She says it is the most prolific raga,
Yeah.
having the maximum number of Janya ragas.
Yes.
And she says 31 is the number.
Well, I went through her list and I remember saying Malavagaula. I can check it again. But
Okay.
my understanding is including Malavagaula, it is 31.
Okay.
Hmm.
Madam, also
This is as per Ravi Koti Teja, the Lakshana Gita.
Lakshana Gita.
Yes.
Okay. I think basically Malavagaula has a kind of melancholic,
Yes.
very melancholic, I must say,
Yes.
and more popular in North Indian music.
Yes. In fact, it seems to have emerged from the Bhairav Thaat. Is what Professor Ramanathan sir once mentioned to me. Yes.
So we don't sing it that much here as it is sung in North India and
Yes.
as it is sung and relished
Yes.
in Hindustani music. Then you just mentioned about Saveri being given as the Sarigapadasa, no? As a pentatonic.
Sarimapadasa.
I'm sorry, yes, Sarimapadasa. I heard in some phrases in Dhanamal's rendition, no? Dursuga, and in those Kitara, Sarigapad, and Prayogas.
Oh, okay.
Suggesting a pentatonic treatment.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for that
Thank you.
input, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sangeeta Kala Acharya, Dr. R.S. Jayalakshmi.
ரொம்ப நல்லா பண்ணம்மா.
Thank you, ma'am.
நான் பார்த்ததில் அந்த பிரதிமத்தியமம் அண்ட் சுத பஞ்சமம்.
Ha.
பிரதிமத்தியமம் முக்காவாசி தப்பமான வரிசை வரும், சுத பஞ்சமம் மப்பமான வரிசை
Yes,
வரும்.
yes. There is a connection.
மப்பமா இல்லை, ஆக்சுவலி மதமா.
Chuda
While you are
Pancham-
pulling the da in ma, it's
Ha.
reduced. So பிரதிமத்தியமம் always coming from
From the top.
அவரோகண கிரமம்.
From
And madama is sandwiched between two mas.
okay. That is why it is slightly lower. Yes, we are not touching the pa. We are coming slightly lower. Yes.
I think so.
Thank you.
Very
ma'am.
good,
Thank
very
you.
nice,
Thank you
ma'am.
very much.
Dr. Sumitra Vasudev.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram.
Very beautiful presentation.
Thank you.
I just have few questions. So let me go from what you said in the end to the beginning. So about Lalita's melodic range, can you just repeat what you said?
From the mandra madhyama to the madhya daivata, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that is given in Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini. After the notation, there is a kind of a footnote where he has given that, and that is in Sri Vishwanatham. We have that, no? Lolaya Jayam Paradiva. Okay, that only that part we have Lalita, and in the end also. In the Swara Sahitya at the end also, we have only that much. We don't go beyond that up to the Tarasthai. Whereas in Hiranmayim and all, we see it going up to the...
I think the Mandrasthai Madhyama usage is that note of Subrahma Dikshitar after Lalita song. It actually says that Mandrasthai Madhyama
Madhyama
and
to
Tarasthai Daivata.
It says Tarasthai?
Yeah, that's what the translation says.
Okay,
so maybe we could look at it again.
Because sir was telling me, he was reading from the Telugu version and explaining to me what the range was. I will look at the, and I also looked at the English online version. I remember it as Mandra Daivata to Mandra Madhyama to Madhya Daivata.
Okay.
I'll just check it again and get back to you. Sure.
Okay. And then, so this is, what would your opinion be about, this phrases that are given, like the Pratimadhyama usage,
Right.
that is given in the description of the phrases in the SSP,
Yeah.
but
Not
it
in
doesn't find a place in the notation.
composition.
So
We have
that's
that
what
problem.
you played Dr. S.R.J.'s
Margadeshi, we
notation.
have that problem. I think even Ramakali.
We have, it is there
Yeah,
in many
yeah,
ragas.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what is your, from a historic perspective or something also, is there something you would like to say about
See,
that?
in the newer ragas, we don't know, I could not find any corresponding Gita Prabandha Alapathaya for the newer ragas, for Mangala Kaishiki or Margadeshi, I could not find. But I feel that Subbarama Dikshitar must have access to either notations or a tradition. Otherwise, why would he put those phrases there? But I feel if we have to stick to the sanctity of the patha that he has given, we should sing it the way it is. We should not add those phrases or the Pratimadhyama or whatever, which is not there in the song. But that does not mean that the song is fully using all the available phrases. So I feel that he probably had access to some other songs which have not been given to be able to make that statement. So if we look for more songs, probably we will find either in the older oral tradition or in the form of notations, we may find such songs. So I feel, personally, I'm of the opinion that when there is a patha that is given, we have to stick to it. So that is my
Thank
humble
you so
opinion.
much.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
And then about Velavali that you mentioned.
Yes.
That you mentioned that Sahaji gives Velavali under one with
And
one
under
Nishada,
Sri Raga,
and Tulaja gives
makes the nishada higher and makes it a separate mela also.
So is it possible that because they were relatively living at
Yes, they
very
were just
near time periods?
Just
So
after,
could we say that in practice there were two Velavalis?
there could have been. See, there would be a transition period where there will be two schools of thought. It's always happened like that. So there will be probably two sets of people, two sets of musicians singing the older Velavali and the newer Velavali. That's always, and for some time they must have simultaneously existed, and then the new Velavali came into the picture. That's what I think would have happened.
Yeah, but I think that is important for us because then it clearly shows that practice always precedes.
Yeah, definitely.
What is
See,
recorded.
in fact, absolutely right. Practice always precedes theory. In fact, the notation that I was showing you, probably you might have noticed, it said Sri Raga Melam. So the Sri Raga Melam description probably continued for some more time.
Actually, about that, the notation from the manuscripts.
Yeah.
Of course, you mentioned that it is, it's the reconstruction does not come from. It comes from a very contemporary understanding.
Yes,
That is fine.
yes.
But what I wanted to ask is, are there any pointers in the manuscript about the movements, just like Raga Vibodha gives, or then later we have the SSP. But because there is a precedence of Somanatha,
Yeah.
is there any description more than just the swara phrases?
In the manuscript, no. But then, one thing comes to mind when Professor Richard Wides talks about reconstructing the Kudumiya Malai inscription. If you have seen his article, he has a set of rules that he has formed. He takes the smallest available interval. If you have Sada, you're not going to Sada, you're not going to go like that. Sada. So which sounds more musically relevant, or which sounds more logical. He takes that interval. So he has formulated a set of rules based on which he has reconstructed the melody. Probably we need to work on something like that to be able to reconstruct the songs. This was just a very prima facie kind of an attempt. It was not a very logically thought out
that you mentioned.
creation.
I was just asking if there's any.
No, there is no
more
guideline
than the phrases.
in the manuscript itself. And sometimes it says Bhairavi Melam or Sri Raga Melam or something. So you know that it is taking the swaras of that mela at that period. Again, which period is the question. But it does not give any indication of which type of swara it is and how the gamakas are and the direction also. How do you go from Madhya to Tara or Mandra to Madhya, etc. That is not there.
Okay, and one last question.
Sure.
So this formulation of Aroha Avaroha,
Yeah.
so you drew from the Raga Lakshana of Muddu Venkatamaki to how SSP interprets the Arohana Avarohana.
Yeah.
So is there an indication in the the treatises about Dirgha, double swaras also, or do you think Subrahma Dikshitar drew those parts of the Aroha Avaroha from the practice itself?
I think he drew those from the practice. That is my opinion. I need to do more work
There's
on this.
no, because as I see, it's only
because
Sampurna,
Aroha
Varja and all that.
Avaroha is a very new concept, relatively. So I have to do more work on that to be able to make a concrete statement. But I feel he has taken it from the practice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sumitra. Members of the Executive Committee, any comments, queries? If there are none, anybody from the audience? Dr. Naresh Kirti, member of the Experts Committee, so it's not from the member of the audience.
Thank you, Arathi, for that wonderful talk.
Thank you.
I'll start with something we spoke about in the end, which is the discussion on Lalita. I just looked up the Pradarshini, and he says, Purvikulu, ee Lalita Ragamulo, Krinda, Mandra Madhyama Varakunu, Paina, Madhyasthai,
Madhyasthai.
Varakunu, Sancharichun. So it's in the lowest ambit.
Yeah, thank you.
Is the
Thank you for that.
Mandra Madhyama, the uppermost ambit, is the Tarasthai Dhaivata. Sorry. Madhyasthai Dhaivata. Very sorry. I wanted to ask Aarti, if you looked at the Geetams for Saranga and Saurashtra that are given in the Pradarshini.
No, in fact, Pradarshini, many songs I need to look at. I restricted myself only to the compositions that too of Dikshitar.
Right.
Only the kritis of Dikshitar.
So I have this general
Yes.
question about
Yes.
the Geetams which we find in the Pradarshini,
Yeah.
both the Geetams and the Tanams. They're all
Yes.
called Venkatamaki Geetams, they're all
Yes,
called Venkatamaki
yes.
Tanams.
Yes.
And since you have spent a lot of time looking at this corpus of Geeta Prabandha compositions from
Yeah.
the Tanjavur corpus, do we see any of these Geetams? Is a bigger question I have.
Some of the Geetams in the SSP are taken from the Tanjavur manuscripts.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So specifically I asked Saranga because in the Saranga Geetam, the first Khandika, each Avartam, begins Ripu Khande, Gehare, Meerashana, Padumanabha, dhuli something, nuta something, which gives us re, ge, mi, pa, dhu, nu mnemonic.
Wow.
And this ge, I think, is not ga, is not gi, is not gu, but is ge,
Ge,
which is your urdhva gandhara.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Thank you so
But
much
the
for that.
dhu and the nu are the googly here.
Okay.
Because if somebody, whoever wrote this Geetam, was singing a saranga with the dhu and the nu, we really have to think what that
Yes.
what that saranga sounded like.
Sounded like, yes.
Similarly, in Saurashtra, the beginning of each avarta goes Rasa Krida, Gurutara, Manohara, then Pu something or Po something. I think there is a mistake in the text. Dhatu Asure, and then the next one goes Narayana or Narayana. And I think a lot of this text might also be corrupt. So poor Subrama Dikshitar, we don't know how many witnesses of these songs he didn't have multiple manuscripts to compare from. But I'm wondering if also this Geetam, this Saurashtra Geetam that we find is actually marked with these Rariru notation, and then it makes it very puzzling that when you look at a further down Khandika, it says Bhashanga Saurashtra Nagarure or Bhashanga Saranga Nagarure, and I feel there are a couple of examples like this, and this poses a big puzzle about some of these Geetas that we find in the
in fact,
Pradarshini.
there's a lot of work that can be done by looking at these Geetas. I have not looked at them, and in fact, for the non-Malavagaula, I did not look at any songs. I was just trying to give an overview because I was focusing on this, but even Saurashtra, you're right, I should be looking at those songs also in the SSP and outside also. Very interesting that you mentioned these, because that kind of crystallizes the swaras for us.
One final point, I really liked how you use the word devious for Vakra. It makes those ragas sound like people you should be a bit careful of.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Naresh. If there are no other queries, I will pass the mic on to Sangeeta Kalanidhi elect. Oh yes, there is one question. Dr. Hemlata. Minnadi vandirukano.
No problem. It is just an observation because Sumitra was asking whether two Velavalis existed. Regarding the illustrative prayogas in Raga Lakshanamu and Saramrita, both are similar. So there is no possibility that two ragas existed. Probably Tulaja would have put some idea into the illustrative prayogas, because if you look at the illustrative prayogas, Pada Dasa, these prayogas are more. So a system emerged where the Padasa will occur only when there is Kakali Nishada. So this system is continued till Sampradaya Pradarshini. If you look at the janya-s or the Raganga Ragas, when the Padasa is there, it is only with regard to Kakali Nishada. When the Gaisik Nishada is present, then it would be Panisa, because Sri Raga is very old. Another thing with regard to the Saranga Gita, Saranga traditionally had Shatshruti Daivata. That's why the mnemonics is Du. In the North Indian system also, the Saranga they mentioned is the Rishabha is Chatushruti, that is in today's understanding, and Gandhara is in Madhyama's position, and Pratimadhyama, and Padanisa, where they mention that the Saranga Raga, the Gandhara, the Daivata, Nishada and the Madhyama are absent. So, which gives you the scale of Brindavana Saranga of today. So, the Gandhara of their period changed to Madhyama, and the Daivata of Shatshruti Daivata, we are not using that, but in the Gita, it makes sense that the mnemonics, they mentioned only the Shatshruti Daivata. This is an observation.
Thank you very much for that input. Velavali, yes, I agree that the phrases are very similar in the two, this thing. But the fact that he has mentioned another Velavali around the same time period gives us the question whether there were two traditions with the same phrases existing at that time. That is the reason I said that it is possible that it could be two Velavalis existing. But I'll think about the input that you have given about Padadasa, how it would have occurred. So that is something we should think about it offline, Sumitra. Yeah.
The mic, use the mic.
The system of giving the phraseology is what we have to observe
Yes,
then.
yes.
Because if there was, that's what I think she tried to say, that if there is a Kaishiki Nishada, then it will only be Panisa.
Right.
So there is no Padasa.
I
What
think we are
about
getting
Kamboji
into
or Saraswati?
Very deep waters here. Sumitra.
See, we are having
I think we
Kamboji
will-
and Saraswati.
We will
With
close
the
the discussion
Saraswati.
for the nons and hand over the mic to the Sangeeta Kalanidhi elect Vidwan Shri R.K. Sri Ram Kumar for his summing up.
Thank you. And sorry to cut into that interesting discussion. We will definitely continue it later. And a huge round of applause to Dr. Arathi. She's such a great scholar and such in-depth study into the Raganga Raga system and especially Malavagaula. It's so very interesting that this Mela, the Mela of Malavagaula, it's very interesting, and Dikshitar actually composes his very first composition, which is a magnum opus by itself in this raga, and it's actually bewildering how all the janyas, to answer I think Rita Mami's question, Mami 30 தான் போட் 30 ஜன்யா 18 உபாங்க ராகமும் 12 பாஷாங்கமாக தான் போட்டிருக்கு மாளவகவுளையில் பிரதர்ஷனியில். அண்ட் ஸோ இன்க்ளூடிங் மாளவகவுளை 31 சொல்கிறா. அண்ட் இட்ஸ் வெரி இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங் என்னன்னாக்கா இவ்வளோ க்ளோஸ் ராகம்ஸ் ஒரு இந்த டிஃப்ரென்ஸ் கண்டுபிடிக்கிறதே ரொம்ப கஷ்டம். ஒரு சாளங்க நாட்டுக்கு அப்புறம் ஒரு சாயா கவுளை பாடணும், சாயா கவுளுக்கு அப்புறம் மங்கள கைஷிக்கு பாடணுன்னாக்கா இட் ரியலி நீட்ஸ் அ லாட் ஆஃப் ஒரு டீப் அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங் ஆஃப் தி ராகா டு டிஃப்ரென்ஷியேட் டு see தி சட்டில் டிஃப்ரென்சஸ். அண்ட் ரொம்ப அழகாக சொன்ன அந்த ஸ்மால் டிஃப்ரென்சஸ் கேன் டிரான்ஸ்ஃபார்ம் தி ராகா ஸ்வரூபா இட் செல்ஃப். இப்போது அண்ட் தி வே வி ரெண்டர் தி கிருதி ஆல்சோ. இப்போது ஒரு ஸ்ரீ பார்கவி பாடுறதுக்கும் ஒரு சுந்தரமூர்த்தி மாஸ்ரீயாமி பாடுறதுக்கும் அந்த ஈவன் தி டோனல் டிஃப்ரென்சஸ் ஆர் தி ஈவன் தி that feel that with which the composition appears, that also makes a huge difference, I guess. And a very interesting prayoga is that samapani in takka, which we don't see in the composition Sundaramurthy Mashriyami. என்னன்னாக்கா இந்த முக்கியமாக இந்த ராகங்களுக்கெல்லாம் நம்மளுக்கு ஏதாலும் ஒரு சென்ஸ் வேணும், நம்மளுக்கு ஏதாவது ஒரு விஷன் ஆஃப் தி ராகா வேணும்னாக்கா டுடே. But for Dikshitar's compositions, I know most of these ragas do not even have a form, I guess. Yes. And that is the brilliance of Sri Dikshitar, because evlo intricate difference, subtle differences oda அந்த கீர்த்தனத்தை அந்த ராகத்தை ஷோகேஸ் பண்ணுறதுக்கு இவ்வளோ கீர்த்தனங்கள் இருக்குன்னாக்கா ஐ திங்க் தட் இஸ் ரியலி அண்ட் இதெல்லாம் ஒரு லீனியர் ஸ்கேலும் இல்லை. இப்போ மாளவகவுளை ஒரு லீனியர் ஸ்கேலாக நம்ம இன்னைக்கு as she says it's மாளவகவுளையே சிந்தட்டிக் ராகான்னாக்கா மற்ற ராகங்கள் பற்றி என்ன சொல்கிறது. பட் மாளவகவுளக்கே with Srinathadi Guru Ghojeti and Tyagaraja's beautiful combo. You have Devi Sri Tulasama, which is a huge composition apart from Vidulukum Rokeda and Tulasi Dalamulache also. So ஏன் சொல்ல வரேன்னாக்கா இந்த ராகத்துக்கு இப்படி ஒரு சிந்தட்டிக் ஸ்கேலுக்கு இவ்வளோ ஒரு பெரிய கேரக்டர் கொடுக்கணுன்னாக்கா ஐ திங்க் அண்ட் தே ஹவ் absorbed so much from the long history of this raga, I guess. And talking of history again, in the Grahaswara was such an eye-opener. I really wish she would talk about it in more detail sometime, because நம்ம இன்னைக்கு இந்த கிரகஸ்வரம்ங்கிறது ஒரு 4-5 கீர்த்தனத்தில் தீக்ஷிதர் யூஸ் பண்ணியிருக்காரு. அண்ட் இட் இஸ் அ ரெமினன்ட் ஆஃப் தி பாஸ்ட். he bridges தி பாஸ்ட் வித் தி ப்ரெசென்ட். எங்கேயோ ஒரு இடத்துல காமிக்கிறார் இப்படிலாம் கூட இருந்திருக்குன்னு. இன்னைக்கு என்னன்னாக்கா சின்ஸ் we don't understand what this is, we easily dismiss this ஆஸ் ஏதோ அப்பஸ்வரம் பாடுறோம், அது பாடவே தெரியல. சுப்ரமணி இது வந்து எழுதுறாரு. அது ரொம்ப ஒரு மனசு கஷ்டமாக இருக்குது. பிகாஸ் recently my dear friend Sangeeta Kalanidhi Sri T.M. Krishna rendered the Kannada Bangala Kriti Renuka Devi, and he sang the Chitta Grahaswaram, and he was just washed off like that. இல்லை என்னது ஒரு சங்கீத கலாநிதிக்கு அப்பஸ்வரமாக பாடுறார், இவ்வளோ சங்கீத கலாநிதி கொடுத்துருக்கா, இதெல்லாம் எங்கே ஒரு ஸ்வரம் எங்கே இருக்குது, ஸ்வரஸ்தானம் கூட எங்கே இருக்குதுன்னு தெரியல. அப்புறம் வந்து சுப்ரமணிய தீக்ஷிதருக்கே ஒன்றும் தெரியலேன்னு விட்டா, சம்பிரதாய பிரதர்ஷினி தண்டோன்னு சொல்லிட்டா. ஸோ தட் இஸ் ரியலி பேத்தட்டிக். ஸோ we should not dismiss this like without any knowledge of what has gone into this monumental treatise like by Subrahmanya Dikshitar, because it is but for Subrahmanya Dikshitar's documentation இதெல்லாம் நம்மளுக்கு கிடைச்சிருக்கோமானே தெரியாது. நம்மளுக்கு இன்றைக்கி ஒரு கிரகஸ்வரத்தை எப்படி பாடணுன்றது கூட தெரியாது. அண்ட் டாக்டர் ராமநாதன்ஸ் ஆர்டிக்கல் அப்புறம் இவாள்லாம் சொல்லி தான் இந்த மாதிரி நம்மளுக்கு இதெல்லாம் தெரிய வருது. அண்ட் தேங்க்யூ வெரி மச் ஃபார் பிரிங்கிங் தட். அண்ட் really wish you could talk more on that, throw more light on that. And அதே மாதிரி the Chuta Panchamam in Mangala Kaishiki and Vasanta that we see, Vasanta Panchamam illenu Subrahmanya Dikshitar, he quotes the Vasu Charitra also in that note. And Chuta Panchamam garche again Arathi mami சொன்ன மாதிரி இந்த மதமா வரைச்சே ஒரு கமபா மகா வரைச்சே அந்த கமபாமகா எப்படி பாடணும் சுத்தமச்சமன்னு இப்போ பிகாஸ் தேஸ் ஐ ஹியர் சர்டன் வெர்ஷன்ஸ் ஆஃப் ஸ்ரீ பார்கவி பத்ரமே திஷத்து. அதில் வந்து ஸ்ரீ பார்கவின்னு ஒரு இப்படி ஒன்று பாடுறா. அது என்ன பிரமாணம்னு தெரியல எனக்கு. ப்ளீஸ் ஃபர்கிவ் மீ ஃபார் பிகாஸ் அதுக்கு பிரதர்ஷனியில் பார்க்குறச்சே அந்த மாதிரி இருக்கிற மாதிரி எனக்கு தெரியல. You must correct me.
He says that Gamapama phrase
is, I think, in fact, Arathi mami avaloda Vaiva was when she did that. I remember she talking about this in her PhD Vaiva was also. ஸோ ஏன் சொல்ல வரேன், எனக்கு அந்த சுத்த பஞ்சமத்தை வந்து நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுல, பிகாஸ் இப்போ வசந்தால சுத்த பஞ்சமம் இருக்குன்னு கம பா ம கான் பாடுறதுன்னு வசந்தால் அப்படி இல்லை அது. ஸோ அண்ட் இட் ஆல் இட் ஷுட் ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட் இன் டு தி பர்ஃபார்மன்ஸ் as well, பிகாஸ் பாடுறதுலேருந்து சுமித்ரா சேஸ் அவர் டாக்குமெண்ட் பண்ணியிருக்கார். சில ராகாஸ் ஆர் தீஸ் ஸ்கேல்ஸ் ஹவ் கம் ஃப்ரம் தியரி ஆல்சோ. they have all இதுக்கு ஸ்வரூபம் கொடுத்துருக்காரு தீக்ஷிதர் அண்ட் தியாகராஜா as well. ஸோ அண்ட் அதே மாதிரி வேளாவளி பற்றி டாக்டர் ஹேமலதா சொன்னா அண்ட் சுமித்ரா வாஸ் டாக்கிங். சி வேளாவளி ஹேஸ் மூவ்டு, நம்ம நீங்கள் சொன்னேன் இல்லையா. ஸோ அதே மாதிரி ஐ திங்க் ஆந்தாளி ஆல்சோ ஹேஸ் தி சேம் ப்ராப்ளம். இட்ஸ் மூவ் ஃப்ரம் ஸ்ரீராகமேளா டு, ஸோ தட் இஸ் ப்ராபப்ளி ரீசன். ஐ டோன்ட் நோ. பிகாஸ் பிருஹன்னாய்க்கு பிருந்தம்மா பாடுறது வந்து அந்த சாதாரண காந்தாரத்தோட அந்த அவா பாடுறது அந்த ஓரல் ட்ரெடிஷனில். ஸோ பட் that's not how it is in the Pradarshini. It's not documented like that in the Pradarshini. It's in the Kedara Mela. So probably Brihannayaki has this history, or probably we don't know. Andhali brings back that memory of Sri Ragamela, I guess. And for the usage of the Pratimadhyama in all these ragas, so I think it is more to do with the understanding or the interpreting of the prayogas that Subrahmanya Dikshitar gives. Ipo SRJ Mama பாடியிருக்காரு. So மங்கள தேவதே நாம அங்க பிரதிமத்தியமாக வரணும்னு போட்டுக்க மார்க்கிங் போடலை. ஸோ that's the same thing with Ramakali also, I guess, because அதுலேயும் அவர் பிரதிமத்தியமாக போடலை. ஸோ அப்படி பிரத்தியமத்தியமம் போடாமல் இருந்துக்கா ராமகலியோட அந்த நொட்டேஷனோ அது பார்த்து இல்லைக்கா இட்ஸ் not any much different from Major Bauli. It pretty much has the same kind of prayogas. And so but Ramakali in certain oral traditions carries the Pratyamadhyama as well. Is it more to do with the personal interpretation, or how do you...
Actually, Subramanya Dikshitar says it is Vibhasu.
Vibhasu, Ama.
Vibhasu of North Indian music. So maybe there is some influence of that.
Yeah, but actually interpreting the Dhamapa with the Pratyamadhyama gives it a very, very beautiful color when we perform this. And and thank you very much for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to more of your wisdom for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you.
We will draw the curtains for the second lecture demonstration. Kindly bear with us.